The Museum of Western Colorado and Colorado Mesa University formed a unique research group in 2005, the Western Investigations Team, known by its acronym WIT. The team is composed of Museum of Western Colorado and CMU historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, scientists, and student interns. The group has dedicated itself to solving historical mysteries through in-depth historical research and aided by the latest in scientific technology. The Museum of Western Colorado's curator of history, David Bailey, was appointed to the director of the Western Investigations Team, and Dr. Rick Duget was appointed to scientific coordinator. The team was formed after a successful collaboration on the Alfred Packer murder mystery that shed new light on Colorado's most infamous murder mystery. One of the Western Investigations Team's most interesting mysteries to date has been the Distant Treasures in the Mist project. This WIT project looked into evidence of Spanish colonial explorations in western Colorado. The investigation began with a letter sent by the Ute Clark family, detailing the discovery of a mysterious Spanish relic their family found hiking in the Canna Creek area in 1961. Mrs. Clark also sent museum curator David Bailey a 1961 newspaper article with a photograph of a broken artifact with strange inscriptions. The newspaper story linked the artifact to early Spanish colonial priests Dominguez and Escalante, who traveled from Santa Fe through western Colorado to the Monterey missions in California. The article linked it to Dominguez and Escalante because a curator who viewed a photograph of the artifact believed it might be a fragment of a Spanish colonial processional cross, decorated with the first Christian emperor Constantine, which might have been carried by Dominguez and Escalante expedition. Bailey researched Escalante's diary of their journey through present-day western Colorado in 1776 and found no mention of a processional cross or why it would have broken into fragments.
Escalante's diary and letters had nothing about the processional cross, but it did have information about Escalante's interest in finding a lost colony on the Rio Tizon, which is today's Colorado River. This was a whole new line of research for me, and I was really intrigued.
But he didn't find any more information on the strange artifact found in Canna Creek in 1961. The mystery of the artifact would be solved in 2006. The Western Investigations Team decided to conduct a comprehensive search in Canna Creek area where the relic was found. The Clark family had sent the relic to a Spanish colonial historian, Father Sierra, in 1961, who resided at the Pueblo, Colorado diocese. The Clarks never saw the relic again, and it disappeared from history for 45 years. On June 22, 2006, David Bailey, Dr. Rick Duget, and a WIT expedition consisting of 22 scientists, historians, and archaeologists, and student interns conducted the first official survey of the area. The team was looking for additional pieces of the broken relic found in 1961. The expedition found an unusual rectangular stacked stone structure during the survey, and it was examined and photographed by the team. It was decided to investigate the structure at a later date to determine its significance. However, no additional pieces of the relic were found. A few days later, a phone call from Kara DeGette, an editor from the Colorado Springs Independent. She told them their lost relic had been found in Pueblo. It turned out that 94-year-old Monsignor Howard Delaney had kept the Spanish relic in a greeting card box in his file cabinet for 45 years in Pueblo, Colorado. He saw the picture of the artifact in the Denver Post and realized it was the same one he possessed. The Monsignor was a friend of Father Sierra and kept it for him when Father Sierra was sent to Argentina on a mission for 8 years and eventually forgot about the boxed relic that he stored in a cabinet. The Western Investigations Team brought the relic back to study it at the Mesa State Electron Microscopy Laboratory and the Museum of the West, a division of the Museum of Western Colorado. With great joy and relief at the return of the relic, Ute Clark then donated it to the museum. Dr. Duget tested the artifact at his lab at the CMU Microscopy Center and found the object was cast out of pure copper. The fine quality of this copper casting was not typical of the Spanish colonial period that normally utilized iron and bronze for decorative metal designs. Having the actual relic made it easier to discern the symbols, and we found out it was not of Spanish origin, but was a decorative element from a Masonic Knights Templar sword scabbard that dated to mid-19th century. Bailey had mixed feelings about solving the mystery of the relic. It was obviously not a link to the early Spanish explorers.
I knew that it was Freemason, which kind of was disappointing. You know, you thought, well, I had the Spanish artifact, but then I began to think about why it was out there, you know, next to this truncated pyramid, the stone structure.
In the fall of 2006, the Western Investigations Team decided to investigate the stone structure found during an earlier expedition for search for other possible Masonic-related artifacts near the site. The team excavated around and below the boulders and found the stones on top were actually part of a wall that tilted inward nearly 40 degrees. When it was uncovered, it took on the appearance of a shallow, truncated pyramid, a four-sided pyramid with the top cut off. The team searched the area around the truncated pyramid with metal detectors and found no metallic objects associated with the site. After the return of the Masonic relic, Bailey had done an extensive amount of research on the history of the Freemasonry and discovered that the unfinished truncated pyramid or tiered temple design was an early symbol used by Masons. Masonic researchers believe it stood for King Solomon's chief architect, Hiram Abiff, who was murdered before he could finish the temple and its master Mason secrets lost with his death. It's well known that the early Freemasons that traveled out west often met outside locations when no lodge was available. Freemasons had an ancient tradition of meeting on the highest hill and in the lowest valley to secure privacy. The site met the tradition of the lowest valley since it was considerably lower than the desert floor. The outdoor Masonic sites also required nearby high hills to post lookouts to ensure the privacy during their ceremonies. The stone structure was ringed with hills and tall bluffs. Also, the Canna Creek site is near the Spanish and Ute trails, used frequently by early mountain men like Kit Carson, a well-known Freemason. In 2007, Dr. Duget made an important discovery while excavating inside the stone structure. After carefully removing 10 inches of dirt from the floor of the structure, he found what looked like a 19th century muffin-style military button. The button was buried too deep to be picked up by the earlier metal detection inside the pyramid. This early button got its name because it resembled the top of a muffin. Dr. Duget tested the object at the university lab and found the button had an iron core and had originally been brass-plated, consistent with 19th century technology. Bailey then researched military buttons from the pre- and post-Civil War era and found that the button artifact most closely resembled an 1850s-style military button. It was sad to think that important artifacts explaining the significance of the stone structure may have been removed by early treasure hunters. The Masonic sword scabbard fragment and the military muffin button both dated from the 1850s, and these artifacts may have been from a military unit of that period who were traveling through the area. Often soldiers in the United States Army were also members of Masonic lodges, and their swords reflected their affiliation to a particular Masonic lodge. Canna Creek was a source of fresh, clean mountain water from Grand Mesa and was a campsite for early survey and military expeditions passing through the area. The mystery only deepened when area residents told of additional stone structures that were overgrown or in ruins in the Canna Creek Valley. The team documented and photographed the numerous sites scattered throughout the Canna Creek Valley. In the book Tales of the Colorado Pioneers by Alice Polk Hill, Bailey found an 1882 account of a hunting party that looked down from the edge of Grand Mesa and sighted 15 miles of stacked stone fence. This meant that some of the stacked stone structures predated the settlement era of Canna Creek in the late 1800s. The hunting party interpreted the ruins as game drivers created by native groups to trap and hunt large game. Bailey wondered if the strange stone structures were interpreted as an abandoned colony or village, may have contributed to the myths about a lost Spanish colony in the unexplored country north of Santa Fe that Escalante described in his letters.
I looked at a lot of Spanish documents and started to read about some of the voyages like Cabrillo and Vizcano that sailed up the California coast. All along the coast, the natives told them stories about seeing Spanish just like them.
Bailey found that the Juan Martinez map of 1587 and many other New World maps mark the area of present-day west central Colorado at the intersection of 39 degrees north latitude and the source of a large unknown river which emptied out in the Gulf of Mexico, apparently the Colorado River of today, as the site of the 7 cities of gold.
I was really fascinated that where we live is where they thought the 7 cities of gold were. And that captivated my imagination, that all these expeditions were heading our way, or trying to, or never made it, or were told a different story. But that idea that we're on the map, so to speak, as the 7 cities of gold is really interesting.
In June 1765, Rivera and a group of experienced trappers and traders left for the Northern Mystery, a Spanish term for the uncharted area north of New Mexico.
I was really interested in reading Juan Rivera's diary from 1765. The governor of New Mexico had sent him up first to investigate a piece of silver that was brought in by a Ute Indian to the blacksmith in Santa Fe. The second time, though, was to look for mysterious bearded men that lived along the Great River, the Rio Tizon of Colorado. So that immediately drew me back to the idea of lost colonies.
The Utes told Rivera that on the other side of the Rio del Tizon, Colorado River, were bearded white men that dressed in armor and wore metal hats. Bailey wondered if the Utes were referring to an earlier time of Spanish occupation, because by 1765, conquistador-style helmets and armor had not been worn for almost 100 years. Rivera must have been intrigued with this revelation because many of the maps of this day located the southernmost metropolis of the seven cities of gold at 39 degrees north latitude. Bailey was again amazed that European mapmakers through the centuries indicated the seven cities of gold and tales of lost colonies always led to west-central Colorado. Many historians believe that Rivera reached as far west as present-day Delta, Colorado. This would put Rivera's expedition approximately 15 Spanish leagues. A Spanish league is the equivalent of 2.6 miles south of the first of 7 fabled cities that were listed in the Dieter Robert de Vugandi map published in 1772. In October of 1765, Rivera was sent on a second mission by Governor Chachupin to find the Rio del Tizon and look for bearded men living in towns or nations along its banks. Rivera's diary regarding the lost Spaniards was of particular interest to Bailey because of another discovery made in the Canna Creek area. Since their initial visit in 2006, the Western Investigations Team visited the Canna Creek area periodically and conducted additional surveys over the next 4 years and recorded more unusual stone structures. On April 24, 2010, Dr. Rick Duget, WIT Scientific Coordinator, and David Bailey, the director of the Western Investigations Team, were assisted by 4 interns and 3 volunteers. They went to the location of a mysterious 145-foot stacked stone wall partially buried in a hillside near the Canna Creek Valley. Dr. Duget had heard about the site from area residents who discovered it after a fire burned away brush and debris. Duget and Bailey theorized that the wall might have been as a defensive position at the junction of Canna Creek and the lower portion of the old Ute Trail. One of the WIT expedition members and Colorado Mesa University student Brandon Mauk found an archaic 75 caliber round stone shot ball that was often used in small Spanish colonial swivel cannons. The stone shot was effective when fired at hard surfaces such as a rock wall because it would shatter into deadly fragments. The shot ball was analyzed by Dr. Mark Ryan, who used a state-of-the-art digital scanner to x-ray the shot ball. The team also documented a 10-foot section of the wall that was fairly intact. On May 16, 2010, the Western Investigations Team surveyed the west and east bases of the partially buried 140-foot wall. The team was determining if there was any more evidence of firearm activity after the discovery of the 75 caliber ball found in April. The team returned on July 16, 2010 to finish examining the 140-foot stone wall and found a reworked gun flint. The team also excavated near the truncated pyramid site found years earlier and found a hand-forged trigger guard that closely matched those used on a 16th century wheel-lock pistol. The discovery of the stone shot ball, reworked flint, and trigger guard made the team realize they may have stumbled on an early battle site. In January of 2011, WIT Scientific Coordinator Dr. Rick Duget did a more extensive laboratory analysis of the 75 caliber stone shot ball found by CMU student Brandon Mauk at the stacked stone wall in Canna Creek Valley. Duget used Colorado Mesa University's new Leica digital viewing microscope at the campus laboratory. The scope located iron, tin, copper, and zinc crystals embedded in the ball consist with being discharged from an early firearm. The WIT team began to think the wall truly was an early defensive position because of its location at the junction of the southern Ute Trail and Canna Creek. In the back of Bailey's mind were the Ute story of the Spaniards in metal suits and hats and the latter story of the Spaniards killed in a fierce battle. The WI team had been working on another case at the same time as the Canna Creek project that could shed light on the battle between the Utes and the Spaniards. For years, there had been a story of a Ute Cave of legend. WIT Director David Bailey decided to investigate this persistent story, and after months of searching, found a clue about the Ute Cave in a collection of early United States Forest Service records. In the 1940s, early Grand Mesa historian and pioneer E.H. Stewart recorded there was a legend of a sacred Ute Cave on Grand Mesa. Stewart related, "Tradition tells us of a great cavern, the Hall of Indian Fame in Grand Mesa Mountain, in which were held councils and powwows." Could the cavern hold evidence of the legendary Ute battle against the Spaniards as related to the explorer Juan Rivera in 1765? Perhaps the cave contained rock art at the battle or antiquated Spanish colonial armor and weapons. The Western Investigations team decided to investigate the legend of the cave and logically began the search in the Whitewater Creek Basin area, the source of many Ute legends, including the mighty Thunderbirds that once dwelled on the white cliffs of the basin. The WI team began the search for the Ute Cave on August 6, 2009, searching below the Whitewater Creek Basin cliff faces with high-powered optics to find a possible cave site. In August of 2009, museum director Mike Perry and David Bailey located a large dark alcove that was a possible candidate for the location of the Ute Cave. In late August of 2009, the group discovered a narrow passageway like a small canyon on top that led down inside the cliff face. Having search teams rappel down would be a costly and very time-consuming. The Whitewater Basin covered a large area difficult to search with rappelling crews, eventually came up with a solution by creating a device dubbed Argos 1, which had a long wooden boom with a pulley system, enabling an HD digital camera to be lowered down the 80-foot sheer cliffs in the Whitewater Basin. The boom allowed the camera adequate distance to film the cliff face and avoids entanglements with brush and jagged rock outcrops. On September 25, 2010, Dr. Duget, David Bailey, and a group of WIT student interns hiked a half-mile with a disassembled boom and equipment to the area and lowered the camera down. And the large grotto spotted from below was filmed. The team also investigated the passage that may have originally led down to the large grotto beneath it. It is possible that part of the trail down had sheared off the cliff over the ensuing decade since it was used. After review, the video Bailey discovered the opening was fairly large and had depth, but was definitely not a cave or cavern. It was disappointing not to find any evidence of the Ute Cave and the answers it may hold concerning Spanish expeditions. On December 3rd of 2011, the WI team returned to the Canna Creek site for one last attempt at finding answers about the four-sided stone structure. The new search was a result of an interesting iron artifact found in July of that year and tentatively identified as a wrought iron trigger guard from a wheel-lock pistol used chiefly in the 16th and 17th centuries. This was an exciting find that could possibly answer questions about the mysterious Spaniards that had been sought after for centuries. When the stone structure was first discovered, Dr. Duget thought it looked like a rifle pit, a defensive bunker used to protect riflemen. Bailey began to think that Duget was probably right, and the structure was a hastily built early defensive fortification known as a redoubt. On December 3, 2011, WIT Director David Bailey, WIT Scientific Coordinator Dr. Eric Duget, and Dr. Susan Longest, accompanied by 5 Colorado Mesa University students, set up a grid system around the stone structure, renamed the redoubt site, and used metal detectors in an attempt to find more fragments of the wheel-lock pistol or any other diagnostic artifacts. Amazingly, 2 WIT and CMU student interns, Marissa Russell and Greg Johnson, uncovered curved metal armor-like fragments. Later, Johnson also found an L-shaped Spanish colonial nail and a mysterious iron billet used by Spanish colonial blacksmiths for stock iron. Another interesting find at the redoubt site was the discovery of 5 campfires in a straight row, indicative of a military-style encampment. Bailey wondered if this was an unknown Spanish colonial military encampment that had slipped through the cracks of history. Another important question was, what era did the camp represent? After the expedition, Dr. Duget and his student interns returned to Colorado Mesa University and used the Leica 3D microscope to examine the metallurgic properties of the artifacts under extreme magnification to create micrographs indicating what era the metal had been manufactured and efficiency of the casting methods. The micrographs indicated large deposits of carbon slag and other impurities found typically in 16th and 17th century casting. On March 7, 2012, Dr. Rick Duget and WIT Director David Bailey held a press conference at the Colorado Mesa University Electron Microscopy Lab. The WI team announced the metal armor fragments, wheel-lock trigger guard, and iron billet were all consistent with metallurgy from the 16th and 17th centuries. In May and June of 2012, Dr. Ken Kosanke, a research scientist and WIT consultant, did additional testing on the armor material found at the redoubt site. Kosanke used an X-ray fluorescence machine at the CMU lab to determine the metallurgic makeup of the artifacts. The artifacts were compared to previously published metallurgy tests of 16th and 17th century armor and proved consistent with their findings. The iron billet had one final surprise, a faint colonial quinta tax stamp. Spanish colonial medals were stamped at the time to show the quinta, or fifth tax, was paid to the King of Spain. The design of the crown in the tax stamp matched others from the 16th century. The Western Investigations team seemed to have found proof that an unknown early Spanish expedition that dated to the 16th or 17th century and their travel to present-day Western Colorado. Had the Western Investigations team finally solved the mystery of early Spaniards in the northern Southwest that eluded seekers for centuries? We had fragments of armor, a wheel-lock pistol trigger guard, a .75 caliber stone-shot ball, and a stamped Spanish colonial billet. But historical quests are never easy to solve, even with substantial evidence. Over the centuries, Canna Creek had overflowed its banks and devastated the landscape around the redoubt site. The artifacts in the flooded areas have been brought to the surface or buried under tons of debris. The continually changing landscape offered many different explanations of what the Western Investigations team discovered. What the Western Investigations team could have discovered was an old Ute trading site. The Utes could have gathered old armor fragments and iron remnants after the Pueblo Revolt in 1680, and then traded the iron at a campsite that may have predated the redoubt stone structure. The campfires, washed clean of their charcoal remnants by flooding, may have been from a later military exploration. The design of the redoubt stacked stone structure, shaped like a truncated pyramid and in close proximity to the Masonic relic, could have been evidence of a mid-19th century outdoor Masonic lodge. The WIT team would still need further proof to unravel this ancient mystery. Perhaps the solution to the Canna Creek mystery could be solved by the discovery of a new artifact, finding crucial Spanish colonial documents, or finding a new artifact at the Canna Creek site. The answer could be very close, at an obscure research library or over the next hill, like a distant treasure in the mist.